Okay, so criteria, idea generation, and proposals. We won't go into that. We went into that this morning, and I think there's no one new here this afternoon. So, idea generation in the context of PB simply means how you surface proposals or ideas for how to spend the budget or the money. This could be as simple as asking people to share their ideas for priorities that they have, or you might already have a priority theme in how the budget is spent. It could involve asking the community to create proposals together or individually as well. So criteria, this is a set of guidelines created. You usually have it ready for when you're designing the PB process so that you can send it out to people in advance. So they've got that criteria when they're generating their ideas or the proposals. So things like restrictions you might want to include in that, time frame, so deadlines for getting proposals in, when people to expect to vote, when proposals go through to a final stage, that kind of thing. If there's a theme, policy or focus area, or things like regulatory standards, so it might be that it has to be within a set budget, or it has to be around food poverty or climate, for example. You might consider things like region or neighbourhood, so this might be a criteria around participants, so you might have to be within a certain postcode, or live within a certain area or region. It might be that you have to be a certain age as well, so only 8 years old up can submit ideas, that kind of thing. Or yeah, like I mentioned this morning, a youth PB might be you only want young people to submit ideas. So it just depends on the design again when you're setting your criteria. Budget, so you might have a couple options for this. It might be small proposals that you're including, but also you might have larger proposals, so you might have options for people whether they want to submit a small project proposal or a larger scale, and that might mean that they're working with other people on it, so they might be doing a bit of co-drafting, a bit of co-working together to develop those ideas. But there's so many options, it's quite hard to imagine all the options, but those are a few examples. So funding criteria sort of is a first selection on formal grounds. So it's usually the local authority or the city. You sometimes do a bit of sifting, and you can match against the proposals depending to make sure that they fit the criteria, almost like a checkbox, to make sure that it's all within feasibility. It matches up with what you've asked people to submit. And the other thing is if it's feasible to execute, so can it be implemented within the time frame that you've set, within the budget, and the capacity and the location of the region as well. So you can't imagine you've got a proposal and it's in another city or something, or it's out in the outskirts and that's not what you've asked in your criteria. So in that case, that proposal would be sort of not rejected. I suppose the word is rejected, but that sounds awful. So yeah, just thinking through your sort of formal funding criteria for that as well. Setting criteria, again, you might decide on the topic or theme with the council, so with your colleagues within your local authority, depending on the budget. It might be that you've got specific issues within your local area on health or things like tackling inequalities that you want to focus on. However, this is what we're going to go into today. Best practice is often where the community is involved in the beginning of the process. So they're the ones that decide on the priorities and come up with the solutions. And that can be setting the criteria themselves. So this means they're far more likely to own the process, own the projects that are funded, and then have a greater sense of shared responsibility. And then the next part is the wider population or the wider public are involved in generating ideas and proposals, and then that final vote. We've gone over this morning, so I won't touch on that, but again, it's just a little bit about budget. Right. Just checking that we've not missed anything. So I'm going to stop there because I'd quite like to get into a bit of an activity.